The Novel Factory is not massively widely known, but it's actually a tool that I settled on very early on in my writing career. And I love it, and I evangelise about it and try and let as many people know about it as possible. Because you'll hear most podcast hosts, or most people who are in the know, they'll tell you that they plot their novels within Scrivener using the corkboard system. But in actual fact, I prefer the Novel Factory and have done since I started writing. I discovered it, I think, on my second trilogy and absolutely loved it. It just slotted straight into place for me. The other thing about it is I have two screens when I write. So on the screen in front of me, I have Scrivener. And why I like the Novel Factory is that I can have it on my right-hand screen. I always have it open on my right-hand screen so I can refer backwards and forwards to it without having to move away from the panel that I'm writing on. So again, you have to try these things and you have to work out what suits you and your particular writing practice. But for me, the Novel Factory has been a fantastic tool to use. And I'd like you at least to take a free trial of it and give it a go, see if it works for you and see whether you like it as much as I do. So let me show you how I use the Novel Factory and you'll get a feel for why I think it's better than Scrivener for this. This is my work in progress, Dead of Night, and you'll see how heavily I'm using this as we go through the panels. Now, one thing to say about the Novel Factory is you can actually write your whole book in the Novel Factory, and it will actually give you writing statistics. It will tell you what your word count is. You can do your drafts in there. It is actually a comprehensive writing and planning tool, and it doesn't cost very much either. So you can actually download a 7-day free trial, and the software itself is not much. Off the top of my head, it's £20-30, something like that. Though to be fair, Scrivener is also an extremely cheap piece of software. But I don't use it and never have used it for writing, simply because I prefer Scrivener for writing, but I love it for plotting. Now, the great thing about the Novel Factory is it gives you this roadmap area, which will encourage you to go through all of the tasks involved in writing your book, and it will talk you through it. It gives you guide notes all the way through. Now, I mentioned in a previous video, Save the Cat. If you want to use a standard book structure, that standard book structure is built right into the Novel Factory. It will guide you through all of the things that you need to know. Now, you've already seen, if you've looked at my Scrivener video, how I love to have word counts and averages and all these numbers because they help to motivate you, frankly. Although I don't use it and I can't show you it in use, it is a fantastic part of the Novel Factory. I only use a small part of the Novel Factory. Now, the thing that I do use is the notes area. At the moment, I'm writing novels that I want to be very much like, or of the style of, Mark Edwards' books. So what I've done here is I've gone and cut and pasted all of Mark Edwards' blurbs so that when I come to write the blurbs, I can focus very much on his style and replicate that style, because when I start to market these, that's what I'm going for. So I put that in the notes. The other thing is, and I'm only 20,000 words into this book at the moment, as I need to research things and look things up, I cut and paste the URLs into the resources area. And I've also, by the way, keep things like the beat sheet calculator here to tell me about the plot points I should be hitting, how to write a book blurb, all the things that are going to be useful for me within this tool. I save those as a templated version now of my Novel Factory files. So those are my resources areas. Now, the other thing you can do here is you can track your submissions if you want to. I don't do that. Actually, it would be a very useful tool, because what I tend to do is I tend to submit books and then completely forget who I submitted to and when I submitted. So it's actually a very good tool. And frankly, I should take my own advice and I should use this. It is a very handy tool. But let me show you the bits that I use. The bit that I use very heavily is the planning area. And I use in the planning area the basics of the Save the Cat, the beat sheet. Now, within this software, you'll see here that this is also mimicked in the 3-act structure. So you've got the introduction to the protagonist's world, the call to action, the crossing the threshold, a mentor teaches the protagonist, first challenge, temptation, dark moment, final conflict, and return home. So within this system, if you choose to use the story skeleton, the Novel Factory will talk you through all the key points that you need to use. Now, at the moment, I'm using Save the Cat. I'm using that beat sheet structure. So you'll see here that my notes reflect the Blake Schneider version, though previously I used this 3-act structure. I'm experimenting, frankly, with the Save the Cat options. Now, again, if you're watching all of these videos in sequence, you'll know that I'm a cross between a plotter and a pantser. So I do know what all my key plot points are. I know what the story is. I know how it's going to end and who's the baddie and all of those sorts of things. But I only loosely plot. So I kind of know all the turns that the story needs to take. This is the thing I absolutely love in the Novel Factory. It's the character profiles. It's a very, very simple thing, and you can actually, replicate this very well in Scrivener, but I like this tool. I love creating my characters in this tool and having photographs of the characters, and as I go into the characters, I start to write more notes about the characters. And I don't go into all the detail. I don't do all of this about the height, the weight and things. It's not my style, that. But I do like to plot out the character. I do like a visual of the character, and I tend to have these around on the next screen, on my second screen when I'm writing, so I can remember what they look like when I'm describing them and who they are. Now, a great technique when you're creating characters in your books is to actually use people who really exist. Because it helps you to visualize film characters and things like that. And I'm very big on doing this because it's very easy for me to visualize how film characters are. So I tend to do what's called casting my books. I use people from different television programs or shows, and I cast them into the roles of the book. And this is why I love the Novel Factory for doing this. And you can see here the people that I've cast in this current book, and I will also add people to this story as I go along. I'll add characters to that story, depending on if I need new characters that I haven't thought about just yet. But that's probably it, pretty well cast, to be honest with you. The other thing that I like to do here is locations. Now, in this book, I haven't really got into locations yet because the first 20,000 words are just set in the woods. So location is not massively important to this book. But in previous books I've written, locations are really important. So if I open up another book here, you'll see here, this is a finished book, by the way, you'll see that you've got all the characters there, but you'll see here that I've got locations here as well. So you've got the key house, you've got a Methodist church there, you've got a caravan, a static caravan that the chap lives in, the main character lives in. Blackpool Promenade, some research on that. We've got a guest lodge that is part of the book. So I do use the locations a lot here as well. Planning is in there. The characters are in there. The locations are in there. Scenes I'm tending not to use. Submissions I'm not tending to use. This is the resources area for a full book. So there's a lot more information there. Tending not to use the notes as much there, and you won't see anything in the statistics. Now, again, I love the Novel Factory. It suits the way that I work. I've got a record of every book that I've written with the character profiles and all of that. I prefer the detail that I can give on the character profiles with the Novel Factory, and I also prefer that I can have the Novel Factory open on a separate screen while I'm working in Scrivener. If I had all of this in Scrivener, I would have to keep flicking around within the software and losing the page that I'm working on. So for my ways of working, I love the Novel Factory. It's what I use. I can't imagine myself moving away from it anytime soon. It does have a free download to trial it for 7 days. When I downloaded this software, I liked it so much I just bought it. I didn't even end the 7 days software trial. I just dived straight into it and bought it because I thought it was so good, and I continue to use it. So what I would recommend then is, if you're not quite sure how you're going to write yet, download it, take a trial, see what you think of it, and if you love it as much as I do, you'll buy it. It doesn't cost very much to buy, but I heavily use it. I now use it for every single book that I write, and will continue to do so until something better comes along. One more thing to point out about this software: I'm using the downloadable version, but they are currently working on a web-hosted version, one that backs you up in the cloud if you want, rather than just on your hard drive. Now, I've been a beta tester on that version, and in actual fact, dare I say it, I think all in, I like using the downloadable version best. It just suits my particular needs best. But remember, I do download and save all of my files into Dropbox, so I am backing up all the time the work that I'm doing. So I prefer the downloadable version, but if you prefer to use a cloud-based online version, you can. That's being beta tested at the moment at the time of recording this video, and it will be available, may be available already, but it will be available very soon if it's not available already.